Today's daf is daf Samach Beis Amar Aleph, and we're talking about over here. The last thing we learned was in the Mishnah. It says that a Talmud, somebody wants to go study, can leave home without permission for 30 days. And then we go into the conjugal obligations for a worker, and what do you call it? So we say, so we said a worker's 1 week and without permission, and a Talmud can go 30 days. And then we talk about the different kinds of obligations. Depends on your work. If you're more available at home, you have more free time, you have more obligations than if you're somebody who travels abroad and so on. So we're up to the bottom of the page. A Talmidim Yotzim Talmud, that a Talmud goes to learn 30 days without permission. Bishus Kama. Says the Gemara, if we had permission, is there a cap on how long you can get permission for? So it says, Kama de boy, Urcha de Musa, whatever is Kama. Kama, how much is that? Amar Rav, says Rav, Chaydish. In other words, the way in Rashi learns Shadi, the Gemara is saying here, that a person should not really go for more than 30 days, even though he can convince her to go longer, he shouldn't go more than 30 days. So the obvious question is, we're speaking a little about Rabbi Akiva, he left for 24 years. So some of the Rishonim want to say the difference is, we're talking about you're trying to convince or cajole even and persuade your wife, then the limit really should be 30 days. The cap should be 30 days. But if it was her idea that you should go learn, or as part of the condition that Teza says of the marriage, then there is no cap. Because if she's the one who came up with the idea, then it's a good idea. But then the Re actually holds that this Gemara is talking about a poyel, a worker. What should the maximum be? Because a Talmud, even without permission, can go a month. So how can it be with permission only a month? And therefore, they want to say by Talmud, there is no cap. If there's permission, there's no limit. It's only without permission, that's 30 days. The Gemara continues. Rav said, you have a month at home and a month going to learn. And how do I know that it's break that a month and a month? You alternate Shenema. It says by David HaMelech that he had a different group for every single month working for him, and then he had two groups that were the same. Those groups only worked 1 month a year. And he had different groups that they alternate every month. The chol, it says in the pasuk here, the chol dvar hamachlokos habois v'hayotzas. So all those groups that came and went, chodesh b'chodesh, month by month. The chol chodshei hashana, for all the months of the year, and so on. So we see there was one group, there were two groups that alternated month, so each one a month away from home, a month at home. And Rabbi Yechonah says, no, chodesh kan v'shnayim b'beis. You can go for a month to learn, so what after you're married, but you have to be home for 2 months. Shenema, but it says by Shlomo when he built the Beis Hamikdash and he sent them to Lebanon to go work, it says over there that chodesh yeh Lebanon, there'll be 1 month in Lebanon, and shnayim chadashim b'beis, and 2 months they'll be home. So we see that it's 1 month away and 2 months at home. Why does it not bring this process clear? 1 month versus 2 months. Shiny binyan Beis Hamikdash, the efshad. The binyan Beis Hamikdash doesn't have to be done by you. Anybody can really build it. So therefore, you be away a month and you should be home 2 months. When it comes to learning Torah, nobody can learn in your stead. You have to learn your own Torah. So therefore, he says only a month home and go back to learn again. Rabbi Yechonah says, if Rabbi Yechonah might time the mahi, why doesn't Rabbi Yechonah bring the pasuk of Rav? So he says, shiny hasam the isle havacha. Those people who work for the king, they got a lot of money. So then the wife, what do you call it? Because the wife got a lot of money, she didn't mind that her husband's only home for 1 month, and because she knew that he was doing it to bring income to the house, and they should have a very comfortable life. So he's prepared to put up with the fact that every second month he's away from home. But in ordinary cases, she wants you home for 2 months, and they only go away for 1 month. Amar Rav says, Rav, continuing, we have a machlekes Rav Rabbi Yechonah. We have another machlekes Rav says, Anoch, if somebody moans and groans, a krechts is shevedes chatze gufish alad. Actually, he can break up half a person. Shenemar, because it says in pasuk va'ata ben adam, you the person that when you give a krechts, a groan, b'shivrim masnaim, you break your loins, which is the halfway point, and so on. So we see that half a person is broken. However, sorry, the pasuk continues there, and it says b'shivrim masnaim u'meridas, and with bitterness te'anech name. Or te'anech, they were going to krechts. Rabbi Yochanan says, "Kol gufa shel adam," that a krecht can break the entire person. How do we know that? Shenemar. It says the pasuk, "V'hoyu ki yemiru elech." Chazkel said, "They'll ask you, Amat nenech, why are you krechting? Why are you moaning?" This pasuk is actually written one pasuk after the other one. And here we're talking about the Beis Hamikdash. Why are you groaning? And you will say, El Shmuel Kiba, because it's terrible news I just heard. The Namas Kol, talking about the destruction of Beis Hamikdash. The Namas Kol, all the hearts will pass out. The Rafa Kol Yadayim, the hand became weak. The Chasa Kol Ruach, the spirit disappeared. The Chol Birkayim Telachna and Mayim, and the feet all went falling apart. So we see that he described the entire body falling apart. Rabbi Yochanan Yaksib B'Shivim Masnaim. Rabbi Yochanan, the other passage says clearly breaks only the loins on halfway. When the groaning starts, and where does it start breaking from the midpoint? But it doesn't remain there; it continues traveling all over. But Rab Nami says clearly, "V'nimas kolev." It says in the passage clearly that the v'namas kolev, that the entire heart, v'rofu kol yadayim, v'chisa kol ruach. So every part of you falls apart. So he has a shiny shmua the Beis Hamikdash. Hearing the terrible news about the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash is far worse than any other news I could have heard. It Kippur was terrible, and that broke the entire body. But generally, it doesn't. Even though the pasuk before that Rav brought was the pasuk before this pasuk, which means l'chayr is also talking about the Chur Beis Hamikdash. Yeah, but that's talking about before it happened, and it's telling you, what's going to happen in the future. That's not the same thing as the next pasuk we're talking about after it happened, which is much worse. More tell a story along those lines about the Chur Beis Hamikdash. Ahud Yisrael and the Chum was Yid and the Goy. They were traveling together. Like Yisrael, the Goy couldn't keep up with the Yid. Yid was walking at a very fast pace, and the Goy couldn't keep up. What did the Goy do? He decided to remind the Yid about the Chur Beis Hamikdash to basically weaken him and slow him down. Figured that he'll go a trudge and then the Goy can pass him. Nogi the Isnach Itak gave a krech. So nevertheless, he didn't slow him really down, and the guy still couldn't keep pace with the Eid. Amalek the guy said, "I'm bewildered." Lav Amrita didn't they say okay, he wasn't aware of Rabbi Yechanan's opinion it breaks the entire person, but it breaks half the person. And how can you still walk at the same pace? Amalek, he said to him, when it breaks half a person, if you hear new terrible news, it breaks half a person. When it comes to the Chur Beis Hamikdash, the Shalom, we repeated it over and over again. The first time it broke us, but now we're sort of used to being in Golos and all the pain we have. The Ami Inchi, people say, they're saying by people, the Milfed Tachli, that a woman, unfortunately, who's accustomed to losing her children at birth, or very young, like Bahasa, when she loses another one, she doesn't get as frightened. In other words, if you repeat the pain again and again and again, you sort of become a little bit immune to it. Okay, then the Mishnah continues. The Mishnah says that depending on your job, then that's how often that you have to be. If you're home, you spend more time at home and you have more, you're more leisure. You have more obligations to be with your wife and have intimacy than if you're not. So the first thing we learned in the Mishnah was tayolin. What exactly does tayolin mean? Normally we say tayolin are people who lady gays, whatever it is. But what does it mean in our Mishnah? Tayolin seems some kind of a work. It's been every single day. My tayolin. What I want to know, what exactly is tayolin? Amar Rava, but Rava says, b'nei pirki yeshiva people who learn in a local kollel, and the rabbi is local, and therefore they come home every night. If they come home every night, they have spare time, and they're not so worked up. So therefore, they have an obligation every night to be with the wife. Amar Abai says, mandik sibuhum. These Talmidei Chacham, you think they come home earlier every day from kollel and they're home? You know how the pasuk describes these Talmidim who sit and learn after they're married, kollel people. It says in the pasuk, Shav lachem. It's a waste of time. Mashkim mikum. Those who get up early, ma'achri shabbos, come home late, and oichle lechem at some time to come home is they eat the bread alone and the bread of depression. Kain yitain. This is I will actually give a reward liyididei shena. Now liyididei shena, he's going to translate shena is sleeping, and yididei means those who push away sleep. Those who push away the sleep, and what are they doing at night? They're learning Torah. They're still in kollel. Those will get rewarded. What says, who are we talking about? Who are those people who push away the sleep? We're talking about the wives of Talmidei Chachamim. What do you mean the wives? They lose sleep in this world. They're waiting for the husband to come home so they can provide them with dinner, and the husband is sitting in Kayla, sitting and learning. So what do we see from here? Two things. We see that first of all, the women get a reward. The women get rewarded. In fact, some say the women's rewarded. We had more bracha that women get rewarded for making sure that everybody learns Torah. Here the pasuk says that they get the schar. These women who wait for the husband to come back and then to give them food and everything else. But what do we see? That the husbands came home very late at night. What do you tell me they come home early? Because these people are devoted to their learning and they come home very late at night. So they cannot be included in Tayolim. Or boys are Chaylam Haba, and the women get Olam Haba. So what do you mean they have spare time every single night? When do they have time? They come home so late. So the Gemara, you're saying Teshuva Bachim. Elmar Abai says, you know what we're talking about? Kidrab, like Rab. Rab saying Rav Shmuel Bar Shelit. Rav Shmuel Bar Shelit is I guess the archetypical Malamed. We have him a few times. We'll also that we have a few. We also have Bo Basra, when to praise his teachers who many years after he finished teaching, he still thought about his students. And we're talking about Rav Shmuel Bar Shelit, who we had him before in the Gemara as well, who was a teacher and a teacher in school. Then teacher during the day and at night he's home every day. The Ochel Midi day, he gets a salary, so he eats his own food. The Shosim Midi day doesn't have to worry about wander about to try to raise money. He gets paid. The Gani Betula the afternoon, he sleeps in the shade of his house, which you call a palace. And that's the word Tayolin. Tayolin, this word Tayolin is the source of this word is the shade of their houses. They're very fortunate because people think they have no money, so even the tax collectors don't come. The shluchim of the king do not come to his door to try to collect money or to make him work for the king because they think he's a nobody. And these people have a decent life, a normal life. There's no pressure. They're the ones who have obligations to survive every night. Robin says, I'll tell you who we're talking about. The spoiled ones of Marava, the people there who are very fastidious and so on. Those people there, and they like to eat and they drink and they sort of a bit laid back. They're very healthy and strong. So therefore, because they're healthy and strong, therefore they should have more have an obligation to be the wife of the night. We'll give a few examples of Israelis. Now we're talking about even Talmidei Chachamim who are very, very strong. And here's a few examples. Rabbi Yavu, how the Koibe Bani, that he was by the bathhouse, and what happened was that underneath, if you remember, we had a few times underneath the vat, there's a big space there, and that's where the water, spills into. And what happened was it gave way, and Koibe Bani, he was in the bath, and suddenly something broke in the bottom, and everybody fell down. He held on to, with one hand, as Rashi describes it, he held on to two of his servants, and with the other hand, he was holding on to onto one of the beams to save themselves. First, two avodim were carrying it. Ifchiz Bebani, when the bottom gave way, the two underneath, Islamli Amudi, he found the beam, Solik, Vasiknu. He jumped up to grab a hold of the beam, and he held on to these two people who supported him, he held on to them. You have to ask yourself, the Mordechai was going to ask, so what do you need two people to support him, to help lift him when he himself is so strong, he can lift both of them together with one hand. That's how strong they were. We'll soon see. He was going down the steps. Rabbi Asi was sort of supporting him to make sure that he walked straight and doesn't fall down. If to say one of the steps gave way underneath him, Solik, he jumped up, and he lifted both of his supporters. Amid Abasi lifted them both up. Since you're so strong, what do you really need to Talmidim to support you? If I'm going to use up all my strength now, what strength am I going to have left when I get older? Not sure I exactly understand what he meant by that, because just because you use your strength today doesn't mean your strength disappears when you get older. Not sure. But anyway, they were very strong. And even though it's said by the Alter Rebbe that when on a fast day, when he was a bit weak, he was able to pick up half a shas in one go. And in those days, the shas, the paper were much thicker than today, and wooden covers, and yet he was able to pick up. So even though Torah weakened somebody, imagine what they were like when they wouldn't have learned Torah. So but Tanya, we learn a worker is twice a week. Second, we're talking about another brayse. A worker is only once a week. It's not a question. Kan ba'osim malacha be'idon depends. If they work locally, then it's twice a week. Kan ba'osim malacha, they have to travel to another city, then the time to come late, then at least once a week. Time we learn. Not playing this time Shabbos. Workers are twice a week. But when they work locally, have work in another city, then achas b'Shabbos once a week. Hachamorim achas b'Shabbos. Those people who do freight on donkeys and they're constantly traveling to and fro, so they have an obligation once a week. Is a Tana. We learned before about the Basil B'Shamai, how long a person could deny obligations to his wife, and Basil says no more than 1 week. So l'chayda, you have all of these dinim, and all this din that you can't be more than a week. We're talking Basil says if you deny your wife your obligation more than a week, you have to cancel. Now l'chayda, it doesn't apply to everybody, because if you're, let's say, a sailor on a ship, we said that's once in 6 months. So if you made a neder that you're not going to have relations for a week, who cares? Your obligation anyway once 6 months. So if you go on camels, we said once in 30 days. So if you made a vow that you're not going to have not going to have any relations with your wife for a week, who cares? Anyway, you don't have it only once a month. So the Mishnah is only telling us dinim regarding two of the workers, which is a tayo, which is twice a week, and the tayo, which is every night, and the poyo, which is twice a week. Amalei said to him, no, akulu. That din of a neder applies to every single person, every category. Why? 6 months. He only wants 6 months. He has obligations. So if he made a neder vow that he won't have relations with for 1 week, who cares? Says the Gemara, the famous saying, you cannot compare. You cannot compare someone that has bread in the basket. So even though you are fasting, but if you know you have food waiting for you, you're not so hungry. So if a person, let's say, is a camel rider, comes once 30, she knows that it comes once in 30 days. But but there's always a possibility you might come home early, something to work out. But if you make a neder, there's no possibilities. That's it. So therefore, it's far worse, even though it's within the time frame. Anyway, that you're not really expected to come home. It doesn't matter. It makes it it sort of cements it, and that's worse. There's no hope. When you lose hope, in fact, we say in Shemon Esrei, these are the worst kind of people who are informers. And what's the punishment? Alti sikva. Take away the ability to have hope. There is nothing worse. A person can have all kinds of tsar and all kinds of problems in life, but you always have the ability to have hope that things will improve. And that's what saves us. That's our crutch. That's the greatest punishment you can think of. Take away their hope. And that's what this is. When you make a neder, the hope is gone. And that's terrible. What about a choma? What about if somebody, let's say, got married to somebody, and at the time his vocation was that he should do freight, but with a donkey, which means he went to nearby towns, came home once a week. Is he allowed to become then eventually change the trade and become a freight driver, let's say, to interstate, and which means he goes away for much longer periods? Now, the question here is, as a camel rider, because there are less people who are interested, you'll get paid a lot better, but you're away from home a lot longer. What's more important to a wife? That you should be home more often, even though we live on modest means, or that you're away longer, but you bring home a lot more money. What's Amalei Moses concludes, Reitze Isha, woman would be much happier, the kab with less money, the tiflis, but to have her husband around the house, Ma'asara Kavin, and then having a lot more money, Uprishas, and being alone in solitude. More important to her than money is to have the company of her husband. So therefore, we're allowed. Even though we learned just before that the people that build the base of English, they were away. They were away for a month, and then they came back. They worked for them. We said because they worked for the king, they made a lot of money. She didn't mind so much if she was away so often. But still, it wasn't for that long. As a Gomel was away for 6 months. That was away only for 1 month. So other Rishonim give different answers. Says the Gemara, Hasafonim, if you're a sailor, Achaz l'shisha chadoshim, once every 6 months, Dibir Rabbi Lezer. These are words of Rabbi Lezer. This view is the view of Rabbi Lezer. However, all of these time periods that we just said, once a week, twice a week, these are all the views of Rabbi Lezer. And if you leave without permission, we said how long? 30 days. is audible as Chacham say Talmidim Yotzim LeTalmud Torah, that a Talmud can leave his home without permission. Beis the Gimel Shonim Shalei B'Shus. So Rav Ada bar Abba said that the fact that the Rav said the halacha like Rav Lezer sounds like somebody's arguing. So he said, yes, you should know that the Chacham argued. They hold that if you're going to learn Torah, there's no cap. You can leave for 2 3 years without permission. I mean, just picture that. And look at the story. Amar Rav says, Rav. There were a number of rabbis who relied on the opinion of Ada bar Rabba, and they left home without permission for a number of years, and it came out of grave consequences. But of the Uvda bin Nafshayu, and they followed him, and it cost them their lives. What happened? He used to come to learn Torah from Rabba. He would only go home on every Yom Kippur. It was hard to understand why Rava himself didn't ask him, what are you doing here? You're married. Unless Rava assumed he had permission. Didn't realize he went without permission. He used to come home every Yom Kippur. One day, Erev Yom Kippur, he was so immersed in his learning, and he didn't come home, and he was running late. His wife was looking forward. She was, this is the day that your husband comes home. And she was saying the whole time, Hashtasi. Oh, he's coming out. La'asa. But the husband didn't come home. Cholosh daita. She felt terrible. And tears started to develop and flowed from her eyes. Meanwhile, he, Rechume, was sitting on a step. And Abu was going to step. The step gave way underneath him, and he passed away. Now, this is a very difficult story to understand. You think here the wife wants the husband home. So what happened? She's the one who killed her husband. Sounds like the punishment to the wife. This is as much as a punishment to the husband that he passed away, and she, the love of her life, she's the one who caused him to die. Now does actually understand how this punishment worked out. But anyway. So what is the time for a Talmid Chacham? Okay, we spoke about all the different employees, but a Talmid Chacham, what are his obligations? The Erev Shabbos. So we learned before that one opinion was Tayolin, that Tayolin were Talmud, a local Talmud in Koil, and that maybe they're available every night. Abai disagreed, but one opinion said yes. But a Talmid Chacham here, now that Abai told us that's not shy, they're learning Torah every night. And we had him on Erevin that the best time to learn Torah is at night. So, or Chagiga. So Shmuel said that from Friday night to Friday night. Why? Because the pasuk, that fruit should come in the right time. So there is a time, and therefore we set aside for Friday night. And also for Friday night, everyone's much more relaxed. The Shlomo Yisrael, so therefore Friday night. Rabbi Yehuda said, others said, Nachman said, Zeh hamishamish mitoseh me'erev Shabbos le'erev Shabbos. This pasuk, Asher Yitin Pirya Be'ita, is talking about a Talmid Chacham that has relations with wife every Friday night. Yehuda, in the Motel number stories, Yehuda Bereya de Rav Chia, Yehuda, the son of Rav Chia, was Chasnei de Rav Yanai. Now, we had a few times the Gemara how careful, especially tzaddikim, should be with their words, even though they had no intention. We had a Abaye who killed our papa's parents. We have so many. So here's another sad story. So Yehuda was the son of Rav Chia, was married to Rabbi Yanai's daughter. After he got married, he went to Koil, and he went to Koil abroad, and he sat there and learned. And where he was, another town maybe. He only came home on Friday nights. Rashi told us a few times, whenever it says Beis Shimshur, sunset, there's only one night that sunset really matters more than any other night. That's Friday night. So he was away during the week. Every Friday night he came home. And whenever he came, whenever he came, they saw like a beam of fire. One Friday, one Friday, he was sitting and learning, and he got so immersed in his learning, he was delayed. And Rabbi Yanai didn't see that pillar of fire coming his way. Rabbi Yanai said, I can only draw one conclusion. Why isn't my son-in-law coming home? I must conclude that he passed away. So he turned to his daughter and he said, Kafu mitase. When in those days when we were looking more cotton, when they did avelas, they should turn the beds over. Turn your bed over and prepare yourself for Shiva. Shilmala Yehuda Kaim, because there's no way that he would delay it. He's been doing this every Friday coming home. If Yehuda was still alive, like there's no way that he wouldn't have come home on Friday. The fact is he was alive, but he just was immersed in his learning and he didn't realize how time got away. There was a mistake that went out from the mouth of the ruler, and he killed his own son-in-law. Years ago, a few cycles ago, we were doing Daf Yomi. There was somebody there who started to write down every time an Amoida unfortunately killed another Amoida for the words that he said. In the middle, he gave up. It was just too many pages being used up. Here we have another one. Yannick unfortunately killed his own son-in-law. Unintentionally. Rebbe Iasik. Now this is a fascinating story here. Rebbe Iasik lebrei beirabchia. Rebbe was involved that he had his daughter marrying the son of Rab Chia. Rab Chia was his prize student, and Rebbe was going to make a shidduch with Rab Chia. When it came the day of the wedding, and they were writing the ksuva, noch nafsha dervisa. She died. Rebbe's daughter died. Omar Rebbe said, Chas v'sholom psul. It seemed like the Eibusha did not want that this shidduch should go ahead. And he said, Chas v'sholom, is there some kind of a psul in our families that the Eibusha didn't want this marriage to continue? Yesivu, they sat down. V'ainu b'mishpachas, they sat down, decided to look in their yichus to see whether the two families are suitable. Rebbe Osi Meshvatya ben Avital. Rebbe came from David HaMelech, one of his wives, Shvatya, the son of Avital, and Rab Chia Osi came Mishimi Achei David. So Rab Chia came from the brother of David, and Rebbe came from royalty from David HaMelech. So we see clearly that Rebbe did not come from Shlomo HaMelech, which is where Mashiach has come, that lineage, another lineage. We actually had to Rishalmi, but it was brought down in Sanhedrin. We'll have a Gemara Sanhedrin in places of Hay, where that Rebbe actually came from the Nekevis of David HaMelech and from the males of Binyamin. That he was only from the Nekeva. Here we don't necessarily came from the Nekeva, but he came from one of the wives that was not really that would bring Mashiach. But nevertheless, Rebbe told us on a fascinating thing here that when you make a shidduch, it's very important to see the yichus as well to see if they match. Which bothered them all mafashik, because we don't find that anywhere that you have to go ahead and make sure that the yichus matches. Even though we had Nimar Psachim that memteste, inve hagefen be inve hagefen. And normally everyone translates means the grapes and the grapes. We look at the chas and the kala, make sure they're suitable. But actually, that's not what the Gemara is saying at all. The Gemara is saying is look at the vines. That inve hagefen, the grapes of this vine, and inve hagefen, the grapes of the other vine, they match. And that's why it says you should marry the daughter of a Talmid Chacham. So we're talking about the yichus. But here Rebbe took it to a next level, and he said that because our yichus doesn't match Rebbe myself, this shidduch couldn't go ahead. Anyway, the story goes further. So Rebbe's son passed away. So now he took his daughter Rebbe and he decided to marry so he took his son to marry the daughter of Yosef ben Zimra. So his Rebbe's son was trying to marry Rab Chia's daughter. Rab Chia's daughter passed away, so now he took his son to marry the daughter of Rabbi Yosef ben Zimra. Now it must be following that story. Rabbi Yosef ben Zimra's yichus was equal to Rebbe, because Rabbi Yosef ben Zimra's yichus was not equal to Rebbe. Then what's the point? If it doesn't even come from David HaMelech's brother, makes it even worse. So it must assume that it comes from the same yichus. And they made up that he'll go to Koil for 12 years. Which you find in many places even today, that you get married and then we'll support him in Koil for a number of years, support him for 12 years. But this is more than just supporting him in Gashmis. He was going to leave home, get married and leave home. We'll have more Kedushin about what's better, to get married first and then go learn, or learn first and then get married. Anyway, so they got married, and then we had their Holland or depends if in Israel or in Babel, for 12 years. The Mezel Beirat to go to Yeshiva. What happened was he never saw his column. But then, which is hard to understand, because we had more Kedusha in the second period, you're not allowed to marry, so you're not allowed to get engaged unless you actually see her. Anyway, so maybe this is right before he got engaged. They took the girl, and look at that, Achalfu Kameh. They didn't even sit down to talk. They just took the girl and passed her by in front of him so that he can lay eyes on her. Amaluhu, and it was instant love. Amalu, he said, 1 second, I'm not going away for 12 years to Yeshiva and Koil. I want to be with her. Nehevet Shishnin. Let's settle. No, they were actually forcing him to go to Koil for 12 years. He wanted to become a big Talmid Chacham. Rebbe wanted the son to be Rebbe's son. So he said, 1 second. I want, Rabbi Shimon said, he said, I want to be only 6 years. So Rabbi son said, let me go to Koil for 6 years. I want to go back to her. Okay. Achavu kamei. Then they brought a second time. Amaluhu, 1 second. And he now became besotted. Ichanis, want to get married straight away. And then Vahadul Ezel, I'll go to yeshiva afterwards. Have the Kamachsim Abu. Then he was embarrassed. First, he was going to go learn for 12 years, all the big plans, and then 6 years, and now he decided he wants to get married first. Then I'll go to yeshiva. Amalei, so Rebbe wanted to console him, and he said, B'ni, my son, das koine yeshbach. You're just like the Eibishter. Why? Because first he says to be aim of a first he said, let's go into Eretz Yisrael, and then we'll make a house for Hashem, the base of Mikdash. While they were in the desert, he said, you know what, I can't wait. Build me a home right now amongst you. Same thing here. First we told you to go away, and then you come back and get properly married, and now you want to get married first. Also, so what happened was Yosef Tartis he sat 12 years, he got married, and then she waited for him. They agreed, and she agreed, and he went to Koil far away to learn for 12 years. Ad also, because they were married and they wanted to be together and she couldn't, she lost her ability to conceive. Ad also, she lost the ability to bear children. Omar Rebbe, so Rebbe said, hey, what should I do now? Nigrish, should we divorce her? Yemru Aniyazu Lishav Shimra. What, this poor girl never waited for her husband 12 years. She allowed him to go to yeshiva, and this is the reward she gets. They can't bear any children. Ninziv Itzach to let him marry another woman. If Yemru, they'll say, Zu Ishtavu, either Zugosai or Zainosai. They'll say, the new one, the one born with children, is his wife, and this other one is purely there, like we had by Lemech, be like his Zaina. That's our version. Or just that's the match made in heaven, but it's nothing. She's not really the wife. So what did Rebbe do? Boiler Rachme, he davened, the Istia, she was cured, and she was able to have children. We're just proving the point that with permission, you can go for a long time. You see all these stories. But again, it doesn't prove anything because this was conditional in the marriage, which is different, or she agreed, or might have been her idea. And the Gemara now relates another few stories. Rab Chanan Mechanoi have a cause of the Bein Ab. Rab Chanan Mechanoi went to yeshiva b'shili hilul of Shimon Yochai. The very last day of Shav Brachos of Shimon Yochai, he went off to yeshiva. Amalei Shimon Yochai says, "Do me a favor, you actively wait one more day until my Shav Brachos are totally over. Adi osi b'hadach. I want to go together with you to yeshiva." Lo iakle. He didn't want to delay even by one day, even though he's going for years. He didn't want to delay by one day if he could. He sat 12 years in yeshiva. Imagine, he couldn't wait one more day for Rav Shimon Yochai to join him. So he went, Chanani went on his own. When he came back home, they rebuilt the city and all the streets changed and so he didn't recognize the city, he didn't even know where he lived. He didn't even know how to get home. Azal, he went, Yosef Agudadnar, he sat by the river. Shamal Ahuda Visa, he heard this woman say, he heard this woman say, or the young girl say, daughter of Chachanoi, Mali Kaloscha Vetones, go fill up your vessels and let's go. Amashmamino Haida Visa Didab. He said that this girl must be my family. Azal Basra, he followed her. Now, he didn't recognize the girl because he left for 12 years. She grew up. He followed her. His wife was sitting at home. Konala kamcha, and she was there making dough for challah or bread. Dol ena, she lifted her eyes. Chazisa, she saw her husband after 12 years. Sava liba, her heart saw. She had and porach rucha, she had a massive heart attack and she passed away. From sheer excitement, finally seeing her husband. Omar Lefonov, so Rab Chanina ben Chachanoi said, he said, Eibishter, Ani Yezu, my wife, who waited 12 years to see me, Zes Chod, and she allowed me to go learn. This is her reward. Boy Rachme Allah, he davened to Hashem, and she came back to life. Rab Chama Bisa also went to yeshiva for 12 years after he got married to Koil. He also, when he came home, he said, I'm not going to do a chachnoi. If my wife passes away, I have no guarantees that I'll have the ability to resurrect her. Ayil Yosef Medrash, he went to sat down in the base of Medrash, and he was going to send somebody, a shliach, to go inform his wife that he's home, to break the news slowly. Shalach Lebei sent somebody to his house to tell him. Also, Rabbi Isha Brei, that he had a son, Rabbi Isha, that he hadn't seen in 12 years. I mean, he left his little baby, didn't recognize him at all. Rabbi Isha came into town, and Yosef Kamei, and he sat before him. And it looks like he was ready to call Rabbi Isha. How the Kamashale Shmaita. And this Rabbi Isha started to ask this guest, without asking who he was, asked him all kinds of questions. Chaza, he saw the Kamashale. This young man was extremely smart and very sharp. Cholosh Daita. He started to have misgivings. Amar, he said, "Oh, did I do the right thing going to Koil for 12 years? I didn't raise my child. I didn't teach him Torah. I would have remained home. I would have had a son just like him, also smart. And now I didn't do that. Maybe I did the wrong thing going to Koil." Ola Beisa, he came home. Obrei and his son followed him because his son lived in that house. But he didn't realize that was his son. So he thought that the guy is coming to ask more questions. Come Kamei, he stood up before this young man. He thought that this young man is going following him because he wants to ask him more questions. His wife said, she already knew that he was coming. Bro, where do you find that a father stands up out of respect for his son? So Rambam Chama was so proud of the son. He said, Hachut HaMeshulish, that a string that has 3 threads, doesn't get cut off quickly. So because now that his grandson learned Torah, and he himself Chama learned Torah, and his father Bisa also was a big Talmid Chacham. And Taisa already adds that when do we say that 3 generations learn Torah, the Torah remains in the family if all 3 generations saw each other, but not if they we're not together. Rabbi Isha ben Chama Bisa, this was Rabbi Isha, the son of Rabbi Chama bar Bisa. Now we're talking about Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, Raya ben Kalbasvua. Rabbi Akiva was married the daughter of Kalbasvua. Why he's called Kalbasvua? We had in Margitin, because anybody came to his house hungry as a dog, he would give him so much food and sated him. So what happened was, the Ben Kalbasvua had a Chazise Bartit to have a tzniya. The daughter of Ben Kalbasvua, Rabbi Akiva, was very modest. Now, all the Rishonim want to know how can that be. When we learned Merv Shachan did that, Tessa Akiva said when he was in Amoritz, if he ever saw Talmid Chacham, he would rip them apart, and he would bite them like a wild donkey. So some say that was the first period, and then by the time he married the daughter, he already learned a little bit. So he knew something. Taisa here, however, says interesting that he not that he was always a Shema Mitzvahs. But he was saying the Amaratzim thought that Talmid Chacham looked at them condescendingly, and that's what they hated about the Chacham. Not they hated Torah Chas v'Shalom, but he hated the fact, this gaiva or this haughtiness of these Talmid Chachamim who had no time for these Amaratzim. Anyway, she saw that he was modest. Amrullah, she said to him, Imikadashlach. She sort of fell for him, and she said to him, if I marry you, Azad Lebeinav, will you go to yeshiva to learn properly? Amrullah, yes. So it was actually totally her initiative that Rabbi Akiva went to learn Torah. Discreetly, because she knew that her father would never agree that the daughter of such a wealthy family, wealthy man, should marry such a simple person. So they eloped. Vishadarte, and she sent them off to yeshiva. Shama Avu, her father, somehow or another found out, and Afkim Bebeise, he tossed her out of the house. And Adonam, and he said, I don't have any benefit from my wealth. And basically, she was impoverished. And we'll have in the Gemara Nedarim, a whole story, how Rabbi Akiva later, how poor they were. And later on, how wealthy they became. Ozil Yosef Shnein Bebeinav, Rabbi Akiva went to study 12 years in Yeshiva, Ki Osa. And when he decided after 12 years, because she said 12 years, it seemed that was the period everybody went was for 12 years. To become a somebody, you have to be 12 years. So anyway, so he went. He brought back with him Alfred Tamid. He brought back with him 12,000 students. Shamallah Husab, when he came to the house, he overheard a conversation where this person was talking to his wife, and this person was saying, he said to this woman, to his wife, how much longer do you want to be a living widow? You're alone here, your husband's away in yeshiva somewhere, completely forgot about you. She said to him, if he would listen to me, Yosef today says, let him say another 12 years in yeshiva and become even a great Talmid Chacham. Amar Rabbi Akiva said to himself, B'shus Kavina, she's giving me permission. So he decided not to go home because he felt that if he would go home, he wouldn't have the courage to go away another 12 years. So he went another 12 years without even saying hello to his wife. The Beit Rav in Yeshiva. Ki also this time after 24 years when he came back, I see Bahade, he brought back with him Esrin va'arbo alfei talmid. He brought back 24,000 students. Shama the Visa, when the wife heard that Akiva was coming back, she started to go out to go greet him. One of the neighbors said to him, "She'ili mani lobos. Why don't you borrow from me from somebody some very nice clothes, look like a mensch, because they were very very poor, dressed nicely, and you're going to meet now one of the great Tamil Chachamim. The echsoi and cover yourself." She said, "Your day at tzaddik nefesh behemtoi." The tzaddik knows the nefesh. You think they look at the outside, they know exactly what's going on the inside, and therefore it doesn't matter what clothes I'm wearing. He knows what happened. Only because of him, I lost all our wealth. When she approached him, she fell on her face. She was kissing his feet. I guess he was riding on a horse. The shamish of Rabbi Kiva didn't know who this woman was, and he started to push her away. Amaluhu, Rabbi Kiva said to the Gabbai, to his shamish, Shavkua, leave her be. Shali, ushalachem, shalahu. Everything that I have, and everything that you 24,000 students have, is all hers. Shamavu, her father heard. The Asa Gabar her father heard that a great man came to town. He had no idea that this was the son-in-law. But he said, he also had misgivings why he denied her all these days. He watched his daughter living in poverty, but he didn't. When you make a vow, you can't just annul a vow. You have to find a heter, and he couldn't find it. Rabbanan couldn't find a heter. And also, I'll go to him. Maybe he can find a way to a heter. What was the heter? The heter was if we would. Okay, excuse me a second. Amalei. So Rabbi said to him. When he came to Rabbi Kiva, he didn't recognize. He said, Rabbi Kiva said to him, "I died to the Gabar Rabbi. May not had initially. If you would have known that your son-in-law would have become a great rabbi, would you have made this neder? I feel a pedig echad. I don't need him to be a big rabbi. If he would knew one pedig, or if he locha achas, which sounds more like he did nothing, not like those Rishonim, the rich one, others who say that Rabbi Kiva knew something when he married her. Sounds like from this Gemara here that he actually knew nothing, because he says, if you just learn one pedig, I'd be happy. Unless whatever he learned, he kept to himself and no one had a clue. He said, "Anahu." That's me. So that was the basis for the unraveling of this neder was noiled by saying, had you known this would have happened, would it be good enough? Now the problem is we learned in Durham, you cannot say if you would have known that something would have happened, which at that time didn't happen yet, would you have done it? You can't do that. It has to be something that's there already, but you just weren't aware of it. This didn't happen yet. It's something new. So Taisha says an interesting thing. That it's not called noilid. Why? The moment you decide to go to yeshiva, everybody who goes to yeshiva to learn generally will come back at Talmud Chacham. So therefore, it's not noilid as if already it happened that moment when he made that decision. Anyway, so he says it's me. Nafal alapa, he fell on his face, and the father-in-law kissed him. He gave him half of his wealth. Bar Tay did Rabbi Akiva, the daughter of Akiva, of the Benazai Hachi. The daughter of Akiva did exactly the same thing to Benazai, that he wanted to marry her, and it's a different opinion. They actually didn't Gemara in Saita whether he did marry her or he didn't marry her, but she said to her mother, "I did better than you. You gave up 24 years of your husband, but then you had him. I gave up because they divorced. I let him because Benazai says, Nafshi choshke b'Torah, I need to learn Torah. So I gave him more than you." Behind that mention, people say the sheep go after the sheep. The kids generally emulate their parents. Parents are a role model, and also to play on words because her name was Rachel. Akiva's wife's name is Rachel, and so we say the sheep goes after the sheep, or Rachel followed the Rachel. The way the mother behaved, that's how the daughter behaved. So the best way of teaching somebody is by being a role model. Okay, beautiful Gemara. We'll continue tomorrow. Mitzvah Shem.